Yesterday, Jaraji explained that one should learn the correct method of practice in order to purify one's body, speech, and mind. If one does not practice in order to avoid, in order to prevent, in order to cure, suppress, and uproot, then one's body, speech, and mind will be improper. If one indulges one's mind onto wrongdoing, evil conduct, then one will be committing wrongdoing. If one is letting one's mind go freely on these misconducts, or if one's mind goes freely on sensual objects, then it will be committing wrongdoing. If one is practicing haphazardly, without any cherishing the practice, then there will not be of benefit. In order to gain the benefit of practice, it is connected with two things, sadhuka savana and sadhuka manasikara. And with these two things, one can eradicate gross, medium, and refined form of rudeness, and one's body, speech, and mind will be pure, clean, blameless, gentle, and cultured, and there will be sasana, the culture of Buddhist teaching. If there is rudeness, then one will not be tamed or cultured. In order to be tamed and cultured, one needs to have these two factors. Sadhuka savana, one should listen attentively on the guidance and instruction, the method of practice. And Jaraji explained yesterday that there should be okaha, pripuja, savana, and dharana. One should learn the meaning, one should learn the correct method of practice, which is called okaha. And one should be clear of the method. And there should be pripuja. One should discuss with the teacher on things that are not clear. In this way, one should learn the correct method. And there should be savana, listening to the guidance and instruction. In order not to forget the guidance and instruction given, there should be dharana. One should bear in one's mind the correct method of practice so that one does not forget. It is called pariyatti, learning. So here, pariyatti does not mean learning of the scriptures from the teacher, but here it is said that there should be pariyatti, learning the basic, how one should be practicing in order to be free from the suffering. And there should be samasana, one should practice according to the guidance given so that one's noting will be effective. In order that the noting will be effective, one should aim one's noting mind onto the object. One should exert effort so that the noting mind will reach the object, and the noting mind should rub against the object. When the noting mind rubs against the object, the noting will be effective. One will be free from doubt. There should be samasana. One should practice in accordance with the teaching, guidance and instructions. One should note in such a way so that the noting should be effective, and one will discern distinctly between mind and matter, and one will develop knowledge stage by stage. In order to do that, one should listen attentively on the guidance and instruction. One should know the correct method of practice so that one can practice effectively. In noting the object as well, in order that the noting mind notes the object concurrently, one should aim one's noting mind onto the object, and one should exert effort so that the noting mind reaches the object, and there will be sadhuka manasikara. Noting thus, one's body, speech and mind will be blameless, pure, clean, gentle and cultured. So Sayadaw also explained yesterday that one should dispel not knowing by learning. One should learn the correct method of practice. One should listen the guidance and instruction. One should discuss with the teacher. In this way, one should learn by listening, discussing the correct method of practice. By learning, listening, discussing, then one will be removing not knowing, and one should practice according to the guidance and instruction. There should be samasana, practicing in accordance with the guidance and instruction. And Sayadaw explained that in oneself there are fields of objects to be noted. Among the fields of objects to be noted within oneself, there are objects that are arising due to circumstances such as seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, knowing, bending, stretching, lifting, moving, placing, opening and closing of the eyes, and so on. So all these objects that are arising at the present moment should be noted. One should be noting fresh, new objects that are arising at the present moment. One should be noting them in the practice of Satipatthana way, so that one will come to know, one will come to understand them. If one is not mindful, one will not know. In order to know, one should be mindful at the moment the object arises. In this way, one should remove not knowing by being mindful of objects that should be discerned. Some people misunderstand that Satipatthana should be practiced only after one learns the scriptures. It is not so. So some of the Buddhists have this misunderstanding that one can only practice Satipatthana meditation only if the person has the scripture knowledge, and it is not so. It is not correct. And there are verifications in Majjhima Nikaya as well as the Anguttara Nikaya. When Venerable Moggallana was practicing in order to reach the higher path and fruition knowledge after Venerable Moggallana became a Sotapanna. Venerable Moggallana was tormented by Tinamita, sloth and torpor, during the practice, and Venerable Moggallana was sleepy, being tormented by Tinamita. And Buddha taught in order that Venerable Moggallana can overcome the Tinamita. So the question is, in order to practice, to be free from the suffering of the samsara, how much one should have knowledge? How much of the knowledge that one should have in order to practice meditation, in order to be free from suffering? It is sufficient if the person knows nama and rupa. It is sufficient that the person has the theoretical knowledge, what is rupa, materiality, what is nama, mentality. So one should understand from theory that the rupa, materiality, are things that cannot cognize. Nama, mentality, can cognize. So in this way, one should know in theory about nama and rupa. And one should understand in theory that the nama, rupa are arising due to relevant cause. And these nama, rupa are impermanent. They are suffering as they are constantly arising and passing away. And that these nama, rupa are arising in their own accord. So it will be sufficient for the person who wants to practice meditation, that the person should know in theory what is nama, what is rupa, and also that these nama, rupa are impermanent, suffering, and non-self. So it will be sufficient knowledge for the ones who are to practice meditation. So, in order to clarify the misunderstanding that some of the people are holding, that one should be well versed in order to practice Vipassana meditation. So it is not so. It is not correct. It is not correct that the person should have theoretical knowledge. The person should be well versed in theoretical knowledge in order to practice. And some of them say that practicing Satipatthana meditation is for the educated person, so it doesn't have anything to do with me. So such kind of idea is not correct. And Sayadaw wants to clarify that such kind of ideas are not right. And it is said that in order to practice Satipatthana meditation, it is sufficient if the person has theoretical knowledge, what is nama, what is rupa, and that these nama, rupa are impermanent, suffering, and non-self. The nama, rupa are arising due to relevant circumstances within the life of beings. So within the life of beings, these nama, rupa are constantly arising due to their relevant cause. When does these nama, rupa are prominent, that are arising. So in things like seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, knowing, bandage, stretching, even in opening and closing of the eyes, the nama rupa are arising. And to explain briefly, Jaraji gives an example. Jaraji is giving the Dhamma talk and yogis are listening. So there are the sound waves that are striking the ears of the yogis who are listening. So the yogis are hearing these sounds. Because there are ears, yogis can hear. And inside the ears, there are sensitivity, materiality that can receive the sound waves. And the sound waves are striking the ear sensitivity. The sound waves that are striking the ear is rupa, materiality. And the sensitivity, the ear sensitivity that receives the sound wave is also rupa, materiality. So when the sound wave strikes the ear sensitivity, there will be hearing consciousness. Hearing consciousness is nama, mentality. And there is phassa, contact. So in the ear, there is the contact between the sound wave and the hearing consciousness, and it is called phassa, contact, hearing contact. And hearing contact is also nama, mentality. And there is also feeling. When the person hears pleasant sounds, there will be pleasant feeling. When the person hears unpleasant sounds, there will be unpleasant feeling. When the sound is neutral, neither good nor bad, then there will be neutral feeling. So hearing feeling is also mentality. So in this way, in the hearing process, the sound waves and the ear sensitivity are rupa, materiality. And the hearing consciousness, hearing contact, and hearing feeling are nama, mentality. What are present at the hearing are these nama and rupa. These mentality and materiality are present at the hearing process. In the moment of hearing, these nama rupa are arising. Nama rupa are arising. They are present at the moment of hearing. And we name it as hearing. And also there are other languages calling it in their own language as hearing. So when there is hearing, we just name it as hearing as a whole. One does not need to be analyzing whether it is the sound wave, whether it is the ear base, whether it is the hearing consciousness. So when noting hearing, one should not be analyzing what is the sound wave, what is the ear base, what is the hearing consciousness, and so on. But one should just label it as a whole, just as hearing. Jaraji gives an example. If one wants to recognize a person, one needs to look at the other person's face. So in order to recognize, one should look at the other person's face as the whole face. And looking at the other person's face, at times one may see the forehead, at times one may see the nose or the eyes, or the eyelids, or the cheeks, or the chin, or the ears, and so on. But one is looking at the face as a whole, and later on, the parts of the face such as forehead, nose, eyes, cheeks, chin will be obvious by looking at the face. In the same way, at the moment of hearing, yogi should be noting it, labeling it as hearing. So when hearing takes place, yogi should not be analyzing in theory where is the sound wave, where goes the ear sensitivity, or where goes the hearing consciousness. One should not be analyzing in theory, but one should just note it, labeling it as hearing. One should note it as a whole, as hearing. And by noting hearing, yogi will discern anyone among the nama rupa, mentality or materiality at the moment of noting. On the other hand, at the moment of hearing, if the yogi is analyzing in theory whether it is the sound wave or the ear sensitivity or the hearing consciousness, if the yogi is analyzing how is it, what it is in theory, then it is not practical. So if the yogi is doing this, analyzing in theory, without noting it, without being mindful of it, then yogi may be practicing for 1 month, 2 months, without making progress. Even if the yogi is doing like this, and if the yogi is practicing for 1 year or even within one's whole life, yogi will not be making progress if she is analyzing in theory rather than noting it. In the hearing, there are nama rupa, the mentality and materiality arising, and Buddha called them dhatu, element. Rupa dhatu, materiality element. It is called dhatu, element, as it bears its own intrinsic nature. Because these nama rupa bear their own intrinsic nature, they are called dhatu, element. So in the hearing, the sound waves and the ear sensitivity are rupa dhatu, the element of materiality. Hearing consciousness, hearing contact and hearing feeling are nama dhatu, the element of mentality. So in the hearing, what really is present is the nama and rupa, mentality and materiality. There is no person, being, man, woman. There is no jiva atta, individual soul, or the Brahma atta, supreme soul. What really is present are the nama rupa, mentality and materiality, which are dhatu, elements which bear their own intrinsic nature. In the text, in the hearing, there are 3 elements, namely the receptor element, the striker element, and the ignition element. Receptor element is the ear sensitivity which receives the sound wave. So the ear sensitivity is the receptor element. The sound waves that are striking the ear, they are striker element. As the sound wave, the striker element, strikes the receptor element, there will be hearing consciousness, hearing contact, and hearing feeling. Hearing consciousness, hearing contact, and hearing feeling are ignition elements. So in the hearing, there are these three elements: receptor element, striker element, and the ignition element. And in the hearing, it is not the person that is hearing, it is not the being, it is not the man or a woman. What is really is present are the dhatu, the elements. So there is no individual soul that is involved. There is no creator that is creating. What is really present in the hearing are the dhatu, the elements. In order to discern them, one should be mindful. As soon as hearing takes place, one should notice as hearing. As soon as the hearing is noticed, in order to know the elements. One should note hearing as soon as the hearing takes place, in order to know nama rupa, mentality and materiality. In order to know, in order to discern, one should note the hearing with effort. One should note with effort so that the noting mind will reach the object. One should be ardent in the practice. One should not be cold or sluggish, but one should always be active, energetic. One should not be slow in noting. In the hearing, these elements are arising. In order to discern these elements, one should aim the mind, one should aim the noting mind onto the object, and one should exert effort so that the noting mind reaches the object, and the noting mind will stick onto the object. The mind will fall calm and collected, and Khanika Samadhi, momentary concentration, develops, and the mind will not run elsewhere. When noting, hearing, at times the yogi will know that hearing is taking place here, or yogi will discern at where the hearing consciousness and the sound waves are coming into contact. At times, yogi will discern that the ear sensitivity is sensitive enough to hear. So if the yogi discerns any way of these three, yogi is discerning the ear sensitivity. At times, when the yogi is noting hearing, yogi may be discerning the striking that is taking place. At times, yogi may know it as the object that is being heard, the sound being the object to be heard. In this way, yogi is discerning the striker element. At times, yogi may be discerning the hearing consciousness as hearing, and at times the yogi may be discerning the contact in the ear, and at times yogi may be feeling the hearing feeling. So yogi is experiencing the ignition element. So whichever one the yogi discerns, yogi is said to know the others by discerning any one among these elements. So in order to discern these elements, yogi should note it as hearing immediately as the hearing takes place. In the hearing, the three elements, the receptor element, striker element, and ignition element are present. By being mindful at the moment of hearing, one can discern these elements, and one gains benefit of practice. If one is not being mindful, then the yogi will be losing. And later on, Sayadaw will explain from both theory and practice of these three elements arising at the moment of seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, knowing, thinking. Sayadaw will explain them later. So, if the yogi is being mindful at the moment of seeing, hearing, and so on, even if the knowledge has not arisen yet, at the time that the yogi is mindful, having sati, mindfulness, the mind is guarded, protected, away from the defilement. If there is lack of mindfulness, kilesa defilement will arise by leaps and bounds, and Sayadaw will continue to explain tomorrow. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.